Sorry for delay. Actually, due to some technical glitch, the delay is still on. Actually, one of our professor is not able to join yet. I'm very sorry, Eshan sir, to make you the wait for this. Extremely sorry. Among us, a very esteemed personality from Australia is there, Professor Eshan Arya. The professor is from the professor is an award-winning sessional lecturer and tutor at Latrobe Business School since 2012. Eshan sir is having a bachelor degree in economics, master degree with honors in international relations, and ongoing PhD in social sciences, set to be completed this year. He has authored around 45 newspapers and community magazine articles and 3 non-academic journals. He has lectured and esteemed 9,500 students across 120 nationalities in business management, international relations, marketing, HR, and economics. He is also a multilingual YouTuber producing business management videos in English, Hindi, and Marathi. Eshan sir has vast international experience in both private, public, and not-for-profit sectors. He was the founder of his former BPO business to not-for-profit organization. Australia's largest and most successful student union ticket and Melbourne's first Bollywood dance fitness program he has gone with. He has also been a committee member for Latrobe University, Academic Board, Academic Quality Committee, and Internationalization Strategy Committee. He is also an associate with Alexandria Agenda, which provides ethical consultation and training to businesses, government, universities, NGOs, and international organizations to handle complex relationships involving diverse stakeholders. He is also a cross-cultural and socio-economic advisor and host his own Hindi language community radio on Sanji Awaz Radio. Eshan sir is currently the world's youngest 6th Dan Goju Ryu black belt recognized by the World Martial Arts Organization. He is a regular guest hand-to-hand combat trainer for INS Hamla, Indian Navy Sea Cadet Corps, and Mumbai Reserve Police Force. With this, I welcome Professor Eshan Arya to just give some valuable inputs so that our student will be benefited by the same. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm really excited to be with all of you. First of all, how is everyone in the lockdown? Everyone is looking very fresh. That is really nice. Okay. Now, would you like me to start straight away, or do you have some plan? Are you going to talk to your students before I begin?
Sir, the whole mic is over to you, and now you can start. And once your session will be over, after then we'll have a session. Not a
problem. So, we have our professor here with us has managed to log in. Do you want her to say something?
Yes, everything is done almost. Even she has login is done. Yes. Sunita ma'am and Ila ma'am also joined.
Yeah, I was not able to log in actually, but in the end I logged in from my daughter's phone.
Finally,
it was not possible to log in from finally. Tried for 10 minutes. Yeah. So my presentation is there, but that will be pending. I'll take it later on. So you continue, Eshan.
No problem. Now, could you make me the co-host because I'm not able to share my slides?
Yeah, sir. Now you can share it. Wait a minute. Yes, you can share, sir. Now.
Okay, so I'm sharing my slides with everyone. Hopefully it's visible to all of you. In case there are any technical problems, then I think one of your professors can let me know that there is a technical glitch, so I know when to stop, okay, in case that happens.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone. Greetings from Melbourne, Australia. It's afternoon here, morning at your end. So if I keep saying, it's afternoon or it's morning, I hope you can understand. I can hear a few of you in the background.
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Okay, guys. So my topic today is going to be about COVID-19 response and recovery. So I'm not a scientist. It means I'm not going to talk about COVID-19's details. Instead, from an economic and international relations perspective, I'm going to speak about the response that two countries had in particular, Australia and India, and recovery that is happening or that we could expect to happen. So that is going to be my topic today. Once I'm done, I'm pretty sure many of you would have questions already, or a few of you might have questions that would arise afterwards during my presentation. So we would give sufficient time at the end for Q&A as well. But let's begin. So the first thing that happened as far as the response part happened, my lecture is basically going to be, first I will talk about the response, how Australia responded to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, how India responded. Now I'm sitting in Melbourne, you guys are in India, so you would have a better idea than me how the government responded, but I'm still going to talk about it. And then my focus, the main focus is going to be the comparison between the responses. So we are not here to understand what you already know, but it is to get a little different perspective about how different governments have responded to the same situation and why the responses were different and why a few challenges were different in India compared to the challenges faced in Australia. So one of the things that I saw was common between India and Australia both was shutting down of the borders. And many countries have followed that thereafter. Now, borders closing literally means no one is allowed in Australia. They were not even allowing their own citizens back in the country. So before borders were announced that they're going to be closed, the Prime Minister gave approximately 2 weeks and told each and every Australian who was traveling around the world, maybe as a tourist, maybe as a diplomat, maybe for their work purposes, to get back to the country as soon as possible. Now, despite this warning, there could be many reasons. Some people didn't have the funds to change their flights. For some people, the work didn't allow them to change their schedule. For whatever, the people who decided to stay back are still stuck outside. So the Prime Minister has been pretty strict, you could say, about allowing certain type of people back in the country. So there was a window given to people for people to return. But once the window was closed, even if you're a citizen of Australia, you have to stay outside. I've been hearing that pretty much it's a similar situation in India as well, where only Indian citizens were allowed back in the country. A few exceptions were made, but now currently I see OCI holders are being allowed back in the country. But it's pretty similar. If you're a non-Indian, the borders are closed in India as well. And I personally feel, not just from my perspective, from an economic perspective, even if this particular policy was very unpopular, people didn't like that policy much. Some people said, why can't we return to our own country? Why are we being stuck outside? I think from safety point of view, it's pretty relevant what has been announced. The second part, which I find very amusing, I would say, is the way the restrictions were enforced. And I'm pretty sure, I really hope that none of you were in the situation of this person on the left bottom of the screen. I really hope you are not the ones who were smashed by the cops for breaking the rules. I'm pretty sure all of you are law-abiding citizens and very responsible students of Thakur College. So I'm sure it's not you who was smashed with a lathi by the cops. But I felt this was a very different approach. And I'm not here to criticize. I'm not saying that one is better or one is correct and one is incorrect. Okay, that's not my place to comment what is right and wrong with regards to the police. But I can clearly see a big difference here. In Australia, the physical, you can say, violence was not imposed on anyone. So for example, if someone was seen breaking the rules, the photo that I've uploaded is a very clear representation of the cops' attitude. So they would take down the details of the person, they would check out, their ID and issue a fine on the spot. Now, some people could pay by credit card on the spot, or some of them would get the fine by mail at their home addresses. But the physical violence part was not seen in Australia. Now, some locals actually felt it was necessary, and we had two sides of the story. We had two groups of people who felt maybe the cops were too soft as well. But overall, we didn't see many people breaking the rules as much as I have been hearing some people breaking the rules and law in India. And there are different reasons to it, but I would say a stark contrast to the attitude of the law enforcers was very clear here. In India, I've seen a lot of videos, seen on the news, heard from people firsthand as well, how the cops were smashing people with their sticks, but that wasn't seen in Australia. In fact, the imposition around $1,600 fine on the spot. Now the currency exchange is approximately 50, so multiply 1,600 by 50. That is the on-the-spot fine that was given to each and every person who was seen breaking the rules. And you will be surprised, since the lockdown has been announced in Australia, from that time to today, just by fining people breaking the rules, Australia has collected $100 million just in fines. So that is 500 crore rupees. Just fines, can you imagine? So that fine collection has been pretty insane over here. So I felt that was a stark difference between the two countries. The other part was actually the definition of lockdown. Now, we are here in Australia, we are saying we are facing a lockdown as well. I see people in India saying that they are also facing a lockdown. But then I felt, the definition of lockdown was extremely different. It was very different in both the countries. And here are a few examples. Now, I believe in India, you are not allowed to go outside. You have to stay in your houses. If you want to go grocery shopping, I believe there are certain times given to you when you can go out to buy groceries. But I hear many people are they're calling the grocery shop to deliver the groceries at their home. I've also seen that a few societies, that is building complexes in India, have allowed people to walk in their compound, but some haven't allowed that either. Things were very different in Australia with regards to the lockdown. So there were restrictions on freedom, but it wasn't as harsh as we have seen in India. One of the examples is the photo you can see on the left side, the lady standing at a cafe. So surprise, our cafes were open, our restaurants were open as well. The only difference was we are not allowed to sit in a restaurant. So I can visit a cafe, I can go to a restaurant, I can get a pizza if I want, but I'm not allowed to sit inside and I'm not allowed to wait inside. So I can go in, I can place an order, pay by card, and then I wait on the street until I'm called to take my order. So that was a big difference. So we could go to cafes, but we were not allowed to sit down. It's a different story where the cafes remained open because many of them were suffering because they didn't have the turnover, the revenue collection that they were expecting, and they couldn't afford to keep people in employment as well. So many cafes decided to shut down, but it was their own choice. It was voluntary shutdown. They were not forced to shut down by the government. So that was one of the things I felt was different. The other one is the person you see here at the top. So in local language here, in a local slang, we call them tradies. So tradies is basically in India what you would say a plumber, electrician, okay, your carpenter, or people who come to clean your houses or do your gardening. So it's those people. We call them tradies over here. So tradies were allowed to operate. They were not banned. So even when the economy was shutting down and corporate offices were shutting down, you had tradesmen, so electricians, plumbers, carpenters going around. So their business was not affected. They were allowed to work because, once again, what is defined as essential services is different in India compared to Australia. So in Australia, the tradesmen were considered an essential service. In fact, Domino's and Pizza Hut were open as well. But again, the same rules like I told you. You were not allowed to stay inside Domino's and McDonald's or Pizza Hut. You had to order and wait outside until it's delivered. The other fun part was that was very different is Uber Eats. Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Zomato, so all these home delivery services, they were operational. Our postal service was also operational. The only difference was they all were advertising that it is contactless. So basically the person comes to deliver your food, they ring your bell or just door knock and leave the food outside and go. Now, most of the people in Melbourne or in Australia have houses. We don't have we have apartments, but most of the people live in houses. So the concept of entering an apartment complex was not seen over here. So it was easier to access people straight away, directly. So everyone, almost 90% of the population has their own house, their own bungalow. So they would knock, leave the food outside and go. So that's what they were calling contactless. So people who were working from home could still order food from Uber Eats, So that part was not cancelled out in Australia. The other part was schools and universities. We felt overall, compared to India, the schools and universities over here took a bit more time to shut down. So I was still, we were, I think, towards the end of March, and I was still visiting my university to deliver face-to-face lectures. It's just that the students had started to panic, and many of them were not attending. They felt it was unsafe to come. Eventually, the university took a call and said, well, they don't want to put their staff in danger, and the staff could teach from home as well. The situation with schools was different over here, though. Schools continued to stay open, and what happened is the lockdown period and the vacation of the school almost overlapped with each other. It came at the same time. So it was easier for the government to shut down the schools. So all they did was they shut down the schools 1 week the actual vacations began. So school students didn't really feel the brunt of having a vacation or a shutdown. But now comes the other problem. We have almost, if you look at the number of school students, almost 25 to 30% of school kids have their parents working in essential services. Now, this was problematic. Imagine if the father and the mother, the parents, are doctors or are working at the front line. Okay, they are a GP, maybe a surgeon, maybe they are volunteering, okay, working as a police, as a fire brigade professional. So these are essential services. Where would kids go if the schools are closed? There was no one to look after the kids at home. The creche that we call, or the kindergarten or the childcare facilities were closed. Nannies, so people who look after your kids by visiting your house, were not allowed. So what to do? I mean, someone has to quit their job. And here came the dilemma of the government. See, they wanted people to work at the front line. They wanted doctors and nurses to be active in hospitals. But at one end, they're asking them to be active in the hospitals. At the other end, they're shutting down schools. So who's going to look after the kids at home? So here the government felt they were going to lose out on essential staff. And that's when they said they changed the rules a little bit and made it interesting. So they said schools are shut down if you're a non-essential worker. But if you're an essential worker, your children can attend the school. So it's very strange at school. You have a teacher, and then you got random 6 students whose parents are doctors or working as police who are attending. And then the teacher has to teach the students face-to-face and on Zoom at the same time. So the school situation was a bit different in Australia. From what I've heard, in India, everything was shut down. So universities and schools there was a blanket shutdown. Classes were being conducted from home using Zoom. Otherwise, in some cases, that was not being done as well. So I saw that little difference. The other difference that's going to surprise a few of you, maybe make you a little jealous as well, is that we were allowed in Australia to go for outdoor activities, but by keeping social distance and in limited numbers. So the rule was I can go out with my family members, and the definition of family is same household. So if I'm living in a house with 3 people, then all of us are allowed to go outside for a workout. Workout only. If we are seen strolling around, we will get a fine. We have to run, literally run, or we have to show that we are engaging in workout related physical activity outdoors. If we are not in the same household, at the beginning, not more than 2 people were allowed to gather outside. Now it's getting eased. Now it has increased to 5. Now it has increased to 10. Recently, we had an announcement. Now, literally as of today, 20 people are allowed outside. And it doesn't have to be a physical activity. Now we can socialize outside as well, but by keeping 1.5 meters distance. But let's not look at now, because now the restrictions are being eased. Let's focus on when the restrictions were at the peak. They were the most stringent. At that time as well, we were allowed to go outside for a workout without wearing a mask. So I think that was a big difference between what we see in India, where mask is made compulsory. And I had one of my distant relatives who went out for a walk, and the cop said, "Get back to your house." So that wasn't seen over here. The last part was GPs. I hear a lot of GP, as in a general practitioner, your doctors, had shut down their clinics, and some of them were doing Zoom or online consultation or appointment-based consultation. That was not the case here. Almost 99% of medical staff, that includes your GP, your regular doctor, they had their dispensaries, their clinics open. Just that people had to book, and alternate sitting was done. So you could sit inside the clinic, just that not right next to each other. It was alternate seating for safety reasons. Another one is the photo that you see at the bottom of the screen. The testing that was done in Australia for COVID-19, we had a lot of mobile drive-through clinics. And I found that pretty interesting, because just the way you drive through, you get your car to McDonald's and order your food. Similarly, we had drive-through clinics for COVID-19 testing. So people felt, or the government felt, that hospitals and dispensaries should not have too many people who feel they have COVID-19 in one location. So just imagine, if I'm the government and I say, this particular clinic, this particular doctor is going to do your testing for COVID-19. If you feel you have the symptoms, come and get tested. Imagine if 100 people feel they have the symptoms. Do you think it's going to be safe for 100 people to be at that clinic at the same time for the testing? It's pretty dangerous. So what they did was, they said, you get your car, come to the mobile clinic, it's open air, don't get out of the car, stay inside the car. The doctor will come to your car and do the testing, so you never step out. So that way, people outside were not exposed when the testing took place. I think that was pretty interesting. And a few doctors, so this is not to do with COVID-19 testing. Even regular doctors, GPs, gave this option. They said, you don't have to come into the dispensary. You can stay inside your car. The doctor will come to your car, do the checkup, and then go back in. So the doctors were moving a lot, but the patients were given a lot of these facilities, which I found very interesting in Australia. The next part was with regards to the response, and I already told you guys about the border shutting down. It was to do with the management of certain classes of people. Now here I like to shed light about the issues that are being faced. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you, you're used to it, you have heard it already, but we are having a big issue in India about migrant workers, the ones who help us with our domestic help, and the ones who wanted to go back to their villages. So now there is always a political commentary, saying it was done nicely or it was not done nicely. So we are not here to debate whether it was done nicely or not. The question is, the comment is, it came in the news, it was a problem, okay? Now, who is responsible? That's a different discussion. That's not for us to come here and sit and blame or not blame, that is different. But the fact of the matter is, this became a problem. Okay, migrant workers not having clear communication or whatever rumors were spread, that issue became quite a global news. Okay, everyone in the US, Canada, Australia, UK are talking about the migrant workers in India and whether they are being taken care of or not. So in India, migrant workers and a few communities getting together for festivals was the highlight when it came to problem. In Australia, that wasn't the problem. The problem was international students. Now, this is happening in two different ways. We have in Australia a lot of Chinese international students, and many of them were subjected to racial attacks, which was very unfortunate. So the clip or the photo that's not very clear because it's taken off a CCTV at the bottom of your screen actually shows a shopping center where two students of Chinese origin from University of Melbourne were bashed, they were beaten up by local crowd just because they were Chinese. So we had racial attacks. In fact, I had a few of my students who faced attacks outside their house. So vandalism outside their houses. So racist local Australians came over with spray paint and wrote, COVID-19 on the houses of Chinese students. So the backlash and the unfortunate racism that they faced was unique in this particular region. What we also felt was the suffering faced by international students. And that was seen when our Prime Minister literally said that if you're an international student, don't expect help from the government. You came here with your choice. You have declared a certain amount of funds. So see, what happens is when you're an international student, if you're studying in Australia, you have to declare funds. That means you have to tell the government that you have so much money in your account. That's one of the criteria on the basis of which you're given a visa. So the Prime Minister said, you guys have shown that you have so much money. Now take care of yourself. Don't expect any help from the government. And that cold attitude really hit international students because the Australian education industry depends a lot on international students. I'll show the stats and the data to you on the other slide, but almost one fourth, 25% of students in Australia are international. So that approach of the Prime Minister to say there is no help available, you're by yourself, hit them pretty hard. And because there were loss of jobs, a lot of cafes were only doing takeaway. They didn't require that extra staff. Imagine I'm a cafe owner, I'm a restaurant owner, and I have a staff of 20. That is usually when people are coming to the cafe. I will need someone to clean, to cook, to serve. What if I'm only doing takeaway? I don't need half of the staff. And half of that staff who is working casually was international student staff. So international students work as casual workers when they're doing their degrees in Australia. And them losing the jobs was a big hit. So they didn't have income. They said that the borders were closed. The government said, we are not going to help you. So international students of all origins, including Indian students, felt they were stranded. The other part I want to quickly talk about, as my slide says, there are 10 lakh international students in Australia as of now. So that's a pretty huge number. If you look at my slide at the right bottom of the page, that tells another problem that India is facing, and that is social distancing. And let's be very practical here. If you look at the population density of Australia and compare that with India, you guys can Google for accurate numbers, but it's almost one person or maybe 2 or 3 people per square kilometer in Australia compared to 1,000 in India. So the population density is very high. It is easy for a country like Australia to say that follow social distancing. It is not easy for India to say follow social distancing. I can imagine if we genuinely follow social distancing in India, I think from Malad, the queue will go to Churchgate, right? If we genuinely follow. So easy to say. I know New York Times and Washington Post are criticizing India. They're showing photos and saying, where is the social distancing? People are not listening. But let's be real. Let's be practical. If we follow 1.5 meters, it will take you 5 days to get inside DMart. Okay, so it's going to take you a lot of time. So we have to understand, just criticism is not good. We have to understand what is the actual problem faced by the country and how they're tackling that situation. So this was to do with the response part. I don't want to comment much on this bit, but India, I've been hearing news, certain communities are being said, they were not following restrictions, and there is a lot of blaming going on. Similarly, in Australia now, you'll be shocked, guys, look at the photo on the right side of the screen. That is Bondi Beach in Sydney after the restrictions were imposed. After the lockdown, this is what we saw on Bondi Beach. Shocking, isn't it? So many people. So this again was a very negative news saying Australians don't care about law, regulations. The cops went crazy. They didn't know how many people to find because everyone was breaking the rules. But later on, when we looked into the in-depth part, the in-depth analysis of who exactly was at the beach at the time, 90% of the people present who were breaking the rules were tourists. So once again, it was the local population. And when I say local, I mean any origin, okay? Indian origin, Australian, Chinese origin, Australian, Nepali origin, Australian, everyone. Those who were following the rules and regulations, but people who were tourists and especially backpackers. Are you guys aware of the term backpackers? So it's mainly people who go from country to country, mainly from European countries. So backpackers chiefly, I'm not saying all of them, but most of them come from European countries. They get a visa that says you're allowed to work for 6 months, 1 year visa, allowed to work for 6 months, and allowed to travel, enjoy for 6 months. So back home in Europe, they already have taken a break. They're not working. They've already taken a leave. So they have nothing to do. They got the funds to spend and enjoy for 1 year. So these people who in Australia didn't care about the rules and regulations because for them the holiday was more important. And they were the ones who were seen breaking the rules and regulations a lot. Now the media didn't cover this. The media said, well, a lot of Australians are careless in Sydney about the lockdown. But if you look deeper, it was the backpackers who are causing the problem. Now, of course, the government has taken strict action, and the photo that you see on the left side is the current photo. So now we don't have people breaking rules, but at the beginning, there were a lot of tourists who didn't care about what was going on, which was a little problem in Australia. What I see is very, very unique to India. I haven't seen this in Australia. Okay, absolutely haven't seen. Is volunteers helping people. And I would say this is the essence of India, People are taking time, they're going out on the streets, putting themselves at risk, cooking food for the poor people, cooking food for ones who are struggling, who have lost jobs. I felt this is very, very unique to our country. This was not seen in Australia. So when I'm comparing how people are reacting, I see this as a very positive side. I see the help that is being offered as something very unique to India. No one in Australia is aware of this particular volunteering and distribution of food and cooking of food around. The next part I like to talk about, guys, is a bit of the money side, okay? So the previous one was more to do with the society, and that is the fiscal policies. Now, bear in mind, of course, with the terminology that we use, when we look at monetary policies, if I say there is a monetary policy, monetary comes from the banks, and fiscal policies come from the government. So here I'm not focusing on the banks, I'm not looking at monetary policy, fiscal stimulus that was announced by the countries. And both the countries, I would say, have done pretty well. So there is no who is better or who is worse, but it's just understanding what was done. So I'm sure everyone is aware right now, Indian government announced $260 billion, this is in US dollars, $260 billion package as a stimulus to help people, to help different sectors, to help the agricultural sector, to help farmers and people losing jobs. So this was the stimulus announced by our government in India. That is 9.6% of India's GDP. Now that is a little difference I'd like to quickly talk about. Australia announced $320 billion package. Once again, it's very close, okay? 260 billion in India, 320 billion in Australia. It's pretty close to each other. So we are not saying one did more, one did less. That's not my point. My point is the stimulus package announced in Australia is 16%, well, 16.4% of Australia's GDP, whereas the package announced in India was 9.6% of the GDP. Now, if we have to argue, okay, I would take an approach. I genuinely feel the package is brilliant, okay? It's a huge amount for a developing country. But if you still have to argue and you really want to get your thinking going, then you might question that India is not the package announced by India, although it's in billions of dollars. Compared to our GDP, it is still less. than what other countries are doing. So that could be a point that you might want to discuss with your colleagues afterwards. Why 9.6% of GDP? Should we have aimed for 12 or 15% of the GDP? Should that package be a bit higher? So that is for us to think about. Okay, there are two sides of the argument, everyone. If I were to defend India, I would say it's a developing country, and we need the money, the government spending in other areas as well. It's easier for a developed country to have a big chunk of their GDP go for the stimulus. So that could be another argument. Another part that we had here in Australia was Centrelink. So Centrelink is basically government paying people who are unemployed. Now, be very careful with the definition of unemployment. If you don't want to work, then you're not unemployed. Then you're not in the labor force at all. Unemployed person is the one who wants to work, who wants a job, but is not getting a job. Okay, so the government has these offices across Australia, and you can see people queuing up. So Centrelink helps those people in need who are in a crisis situation. Now, crisis situation could be because of the economy, if you have lost your job, or you have been there's some people who go homeless, unfortunately. So Centrelink helps them with a weekly amount. So they actually pay them on a weekly or a fortnightly basis. That amount varies depending on what your circumstances are. But Centrelink has been playing a very critical role in the current situation. With people losing jobs, the government is paying people on a fortnightly basis. Some money will keep coming to their homes. In addition to Centrelink, there was a new JobKeepers scheme that was announced. So according to the JobKeepers scheme, you see, why is unemployment happening in this crisis situation? Because businesses are being asked to shut down, or maybe businesses are allowed to run, but there is no one coming to the business. So if I have a fashion outlet, for example, fashion store, but because of the lockdown, no one is coming to my shop, right? So my business is going to suffer a lot. So what happens in this situation in JobKeepers is, if my business is not working, I will get rid of my employees, right? I say money, why should I keep you in the job? Goodbye, you're fired. So JobKeepers' aim is to keep people in employment. So what it does is, you as a business apply to the government that you are not getting enough revenue, that you're probably going to shut down. The government pays the business enough money, so the business pays the employees. So to keep it simple, it's not government paying the business, it is government telling the businessman, please pay this money to your employee, so they don't lose a job, so they can still run their family. And that was $1,500 a fortnight. So each and every person who had lost a job was given, through their bosses, was given $1,500 every alternate week as a subsidy, so to keep their families running. So some of you might say it's not much, some of you might say it is good, depends on the context of the inflation of the country. But I think this was pretty decent to keep the family income going, and so that people don't really come on the streets or suffer. So that was JobKeepers program. Another fiscal policy in Australia was pension options. So I'm pretty sure all of you know what pensions are the ones that you get after your retirement, and that gets accumulated. So the government gave an option to people that their pensions could be released early. Now this is a risk. Okay, if you're having a financial crisis and you try to get money from your pension now when you're young and before you retire, the amount you get after you retire reduces. So you're taking a risk. But this risky option was introduced, it was optional. So some people were told they could get a part of their pensions up to $10,000. Not everything, of course. One-off payment for the whole annual year, for the calendar year. So people could get $10,000 from their pension and use it now to survive in this pandemic situation. So that was something different and unique that I felt was a part of Australian fiscal policy in helping people out. Guys, now effect on the economy in general, it's not good. Okay, we all know there is no it's not a surprise, right? We all know that all economies in the world are really taking a big hit. In India, the unemployment rate has gone up to 27%. Now bear in mind, this is not going to be permanent, it's temporary. Okay, it is cyclical in nature. That means it's because of the crisis that we are facing, it will be okay after. Not soon, but eventually it will be okay. But it's 27% in India. It's really skyrocketed. Okay, it's gone up very sharply. It's an exponential increase. In Australia, compared to Australian unemployment, we are having a very high unemployment rate as well. It's gone up to 6.2%. It used to be around 4 to 5. 5 used to be terrible. You know, everyone, what is government doing? It's 5%. There is something huge happening in the country. What's going on with the economy? So that has gone to 6.2%. As I said, in India, we all are aware, migrant workers are the ones mainly affected. In Australia, it's not migrant workers as such, it is the casual workers. So the ones not on a full-term employment, working casually on a day-to-day basis, hourly basis, they are the ones who are struggling. So that's the main effect that we are seeing. The other part that I feel is unique to Australia is because it's an education exporting country. Okay, India is brilliant in education, so is Australia, so are many countries. But the main difference between Indian education and Australian education is a big export for Australia. Indian education is not a big export. So that's the main difference. If you look at the industry, education industry in Australia compared to education industry in India, Indian education industry, when it comes to dollar value, is higher. Of course, because we have more universities, more students, but it's not an export to the world. We have a few foreign students coming to India, but it's not significant at all. So here are a few data, some stats for you to get an idea about Australian education. And the reason I'm telling this is Australian education industry has taken a big hit in this crisis. And you might wonder, okay, it's just every universities around the world have taken a hit. What is so special? And this is special because it's a big export. So Australia, education is Australia's third largest export, guys, and it is worth $33 billion. So we are talking in billions and billions of dollars. That industry has taken a hit. So if that industry, your third largest export, takes a hit, the country suffers as well. I said this at the start, 25% of the students are international. Just from international students, when I say international, foreign students coming to Australia. Every year, just from those students, Australia is earning $2 billion. So that shows the magnitude of the situation. Just because, think about the economy, okay? When you're an international student, if you're a tourist somewhere, or if you go to some village, let's say in India, you're having holidays and you go to your uncle's village or grandmother's village. Do you just go to the village and come back? You will go to the village, you will spend money, you will go to the local restaurant, you'll go to the local cafe, you will shop at the local grocery, right? So basically you're helping that economy in that village by your visit. The same is happening. See, when international students come to Australia, the 2 billion that we are talking about is just the fees. But is that it? No. Those students work in Australia, they spend in Australia, they pay taxes in Australia, isn't it? So that extra expenses that they incur, that they spend, is more than $1 billion itself. And that has taken a huge hit. So that incoming money is not coming now because of the borders being closed. And the border closure happened at a very, very weird time. It happened when the semester had not started. All the students would be here and we would be okay. But now the lockdown was announced before the semester started. So students had gone home for holidays and now they are stuck. Or the new entrants are not able to come to the country. And that's why this mess has happened. In fact, across Australian universities, we are expecting to lose 12,000 jobs. In fact, the university that I work for, we are going to lose 600 jobs. There has been an email from the Vice Chancellor that give us a notice if you want to voluntarily retire. If not, we are going to lose around 600 staff members. But that is teaching, non-teaching both. So that has been a huge hit at the moment. In fact, by 2023, it's like a ripple effect. It's like a domino effect, If things go back to normal by the end of this year, it doesn't mean automatically everything becomes normal. You have a spillover effect. There is a big gap that has arisen that because of students not able to come in, and that's going to go on. The recovery is going to take time. It is expected that by 2023, just because of this particular gap, this hole in the market, Australia is going to lose $40 billion purely in the education industry. And that's why this is pretty much something that we have to understand and discuss. I think the Australian government has also realized that they over depended on international students, and here we go. This is what they have to face. Of course, among the students, you can see here, Chinese students are the topmost as well. So we got students from China as the number one cohort coming to Australia, followed by Indian students, and then of course ones from Nepal, Malaysia, Vietnam, South Korea. So because of the tension with China as well, and because of the border closures, that big community is not able to come to the country and contribute to the economy. So that's something different that has happened in Australia that people are talking about. And something else I quickly want to touch on before I come to an end is not just the unemployment, but who is unemployed, how long it's going to last, and what are the effects later on. Now, this is very interesting, guys. We know that long ago when we had the Spanish flu, okay, a lot of millions of people died in Spanish flu. What has happened is, let's keep unemployment aside for now. Let's look at who is dying. Okay, this is a very sad topic, but I have to touch on it. So if we have a look at COVID-19, we come to know in this pandemic, majority of the people, the largest cohort who is passing away, who is losing their life, is people above the age of 60. So between 60 to 69, it is 3.6%. People above 70 are 8%, and people above 80 are 14.8. Add all of that together. Okay, it's more than a quarter people who are above the age of 60. What in the past, when you had the Spanish flu, most of the people who died were in 20s, and that's the big difference. You see, when people in the 20s died, it is the working age population that we are talking about who lost their life, and that's why, of course, it was terrible. Okay, it was very tragic for families, but the level of unemployment that was caused due to the Spanish flu pandemic isn't the same as it's going to be now. Now what's happening, the people that we are losing are old age people, people who are already retired or people who are close to retirement. The young working class is still fine. And that's where the problem is going to arise. When you have a population of people who are in age, combined with economic downturn, that gives rise to a sharp increase in unemployment. With Spanish flu, yes, there was economic downturn, but the working class people were the ones dying. So it was getting compensated. The unemployment numbers, unemployment figures were not as high back then as it is now. So that is something to think about, okay? Don't do anything about it, but it is understanding the situation. Even just by regular influenza, before the vaccination was found, between 1918 to 19, the main category of people who died were working age people. And that's why during those pandemics, the crisis was different. Okay, the tragedies were different. The economy, the way it was affected was different compared to now. Now we are having a situation where there is economic downturn, working class people are fine, and the unemployment rate is going to skyrocket. There is another problem that I can see that is not really being spoken about, and that is another economic bubble in the making, or rather a real estate bubble in the making. Try to link a few things together. You see, the governments of Australia and India are coming up with a stimulus package. So basically, they are paying us money, so we spend on the economy. They're also trying to bring down the interest rates. So what happens with this combination most of the times? With lower interest rate and with extra money coming in without working, people could get loans easily, and people could believe that they're in a situation to buy property and real estate, when really speaking, they don't have that capability or capacity. In the long run, if this lending, giving loans is getting easier, people buying houses at today may not be able to repay those loans. So we're going to have bad credits again. Okay, the country, the sector could go into a debt that is unprecedented before. So what could happen in this situation because of the unemployment, stimulus packages, and decline, the reduction in interest rates, bad borrowing, bad loans could increase, and we may feel that we are probably coming out of the crisis, but we could come out of one, and we might enter another one. Okay, the real estate bubble might burst. So this is just something to be aware. I predict this might happen by 2023, 2025 maybe. So be prepared in that era, in that particular time frame, that we might have another crisis in the making. How about road to recovery? A few solutions are given. Now, before I continue, how am I going with time? How much time do we have left?
Sir, we do have a time till 2 o'clock, 12 o'clock. They have a session, so not a problem.
2 o'clock.
12 till 12 o'clock.
12, so that is, I'm just converting, so 4:30 at my time. Okay, we'll have to wrap it up. I'll wrap it up in 10 minutes so I can give you time for question and answers. Now let's talk about road to recovery. We know going green. So I'm talking about being eco-friendly, going for environmentally friendly options. What happens is when we look at environmentally friendly options and green options, for instance, many times the criticisms that we receive is that these are going to destroy an existing industry. Take, for instance, Australia. One of the major lobby groups in Australia is the coal mining lobby group. And the moment any party, government party, political party, says we should go green and we should introduce eco-friendly, pollution-free options, I must warn you, Australia is doing great with pollution-free options, but we are talking about a level higher, okay? When they talk about green options, the lobby group comes up and says, well, you're going to destroy our industry. You know, if you come with clean energy, what's going to happen to all the families that depend on the mining sector? So this is a usual argument you'll see everywhere in the world. What has happened now is because the industries have collapsed and we are already having an economic downturn, there are a lot of arguments and a lot of governments actually considering the option of going green as the right time to do so. So what I'm trying to say, when you go green, the argument is some industries suffer. Some industries might collapse. Now the argument is they have already collapsed. They're already suffering. So instead of going back to where we were, it is a good time to go back to greener options. And we can see a few countries doing that already, or a few cities doing that. Brussels is creating a 40 kilometers new cycle path. So they're encouraging people to ride on bicycles, not use their cars. People who use the cycles will be given subsidies as well. We have that at our university, actually. If I ride a bicycle to my university, I get a free breakfast. So that's a little subsidy, isn't it? If I drive by a car, no free breakfast for me. So that is being encouraged. In fact, the UK government has introduced a $2 billion pounds infrastructure scheme to encourage more walking and cycling. And the Mayor of London has unveiled measures to create car-free bridges. We have seen that in Melbourne as well. In our CBD, we have a huge section where cars are not allowed. You have to walk. It's compulsory. And London is following those footsteps as well. You can see the solar panel farm. In the photo, it's the solar panels. This is the one that's really picking up momentum in Queensland, in Australia. So my point is, this is one of the arguments, or one of the areas I feel all of you could read more about and focus more about as well. That when we recover from this economic downturn, could we, instead of going back to where we were, can we actually go the greener way? So that is something for you to think about and ponder as well. If I explain all these graphs, it will take me a lot of time. But talking about recovery, we have four main types of recoveries, okay? Or three main types. It's the U shape, L shape, V shape, or W shape. To keep it simple, L shape is really not a recovery. That's why it's not included as a recovery graph. The shape that goes from left to right, it shows downturn in the economy, and then it shows the recovery. So on the left side, you see the economy collapsing, and then on the right side, you see the recovery, okay? If the governments don't give any stimulus, if the governments don't help at all, and we are seeing this in the case of the government of Pakistan, who has not announced any stimulus package that is substantial, okay? That is definitely happening. In those countries, with the downturn, they'll probably enter into a depression, economic depression, which is terrible. Not a recession, but a depression. That's another stage. No recovery happening. In India and in Australia, there is a stimulus. Now, all of you can argue whether it's good, whether it should be more and whatever, okay? But the point is there is a stimulus, which is good. That's a good starting point, okay? Now we have to see if our stimulus is focusing on individuals or is it focusing on individuals and businesses. I can tell you in Australia, it is focusing on individuals and businesses both. So in Australia, at least, we can see a U-shaped recovery. So U-shaped recovery is slowly going down and slowly coming up. Okay, but we will come out of it. If you're just supporting the individuals, uh, I mean, you can tell me more as well, but in India right now, what I can see and what I've heard from the package, it's more focused on individuals, less on businesses. I'm not saying it's not, but it's less focused on businesses. We might still see a U-shaped recovery, which is good. We will recover, okay? But it could be a slow, gradual recovery. So we need to focus on helping businesses as well. If a full subsidy is provided to businesses, so not little subsidy, not a part, if complete help is provided for the entire sector, then we could see a V-shaped recovery. So that is sharp fall, but a sharp rise as well. In theory, it sounds very good. In practicality, it is difficult for governments to completely help the entire sector, pay for everything. In certain areas, it is being done. In certain areas, we need that happening more, okay? For example, in Australia, the airline industry, Qantas, for example, is being helped out. Or Virgin Air is being helped out by the government. So they're actually planning to help the entire industry. So for airplanes, they're arguing that normal travel will happen by 2023. Even then, they might recover. They will see a V-shaped recovery. But it depends. Now, you can look at if you have family businesses, you can check with your family if the government is actually helping that area and then figure out if it's going to be a U-shaped gradual recovery or a U-shaped fast recovery, okay? But as far as both countries are concerned, there is a stimulus package, so recovery will happen. It's just a matter of when and how fast. I can see someone is scribbling on my screen.
Sir, please annotate it so that no one will make us scribble.
Can erase it, is it? There you go.
Instructed to all the students, please don't do anything on a screen.
No problem. All right, I'll move on. I'll continue because of the time constraint.
Yeah.
The other part I really want to focus today, I wish I had more time, is about the import and export. I really have to keep this short, but maybe keep these points in your mind when you're doing your readings afterwards. I feel India needs to increase the exports and decrease the imports, especially from China. Now, we talk a lot, I've been hearing a lot about ban Chinese products and ban everything made in China. Let us be very practical. It's not happening. It's not possible. That the trade is too interlinked. The trade is worth billions of dollars. Not happening, okay? It's not good for either of the economy. What can be done is a more rational and well-planned approach to how we manufacture in India. So increase our exports, decrease our imports. And I'll tell you why this is important. India's imports from China are worth $68 billion, but what we are exporting to them is 16 billion. You see the big difference? We are relying heavily on Chinese imports, $68 billion. And China is only getting 16 billion worth of exports from us. So the imports coming from India to China are 16 billion. That is something we need to focus on. We have to decrease that gap. It's not going to happen overnight. You can't just stop using everything. It's going to be gradual, but that gap is something we have to start working on. We have to decrease. Why is Australia's story different in this case? You see now, in India, we are importing more from China, exporting less to them. Australia's case is exactly the opposite. So Australia's imports from China are 55 billion, but exports are worth 90 billion. So what does it tell us here? China depends on Australia more than Australia depends on China. And you must have heard in the news lately, China has been bullying Australia a little bit. They are putting a tariff on Australian barley, but that's because of this reason. They can't do much. They need Australian produce to come into China. That's what I want India to do. Make China dependent on our exports. We shouldn't be dependent on their exports to us, okay? So ban Chinese product, all of that campaign is fine. It's not very practical. focus on the sector, focus on industry. And I'll tell you very soon where the focus should be. Another part is why manufacturing in India is very important. See, we can reduce what we take from China, agreed. But that's one part of the story. How about what are we giving the world? Chinese exports to the world are 2.5 trillion US dollars. Our exports to the world are 320 billion. That is a huge difference. And that is something we can work on. We are hopeful, okay? But we have to boost our manufacturing and boost it in such a way that enough is left for us as well in the country and enough is given for exports as well. A few other arguments that I've been hearing is India could increase trade with USA. Recently, the two prime ministers said they are looking forward to increase trade with each other as well. If you have heard of Quad, it's about 4 countries having dialogue and trade with each other, India, USA, Australia, and Japan. So all of that is okay, but what we are missing out is a hidden giant in the making, and that is Vietnam. And that's where I like to quickly put my focus. If you do a little bit of research, you will come to know a lot of industries that are companies, not industries, companies that are leaving China are not coming to India, they're going to Vietnam. And that is problematic. We have to make our environment as conducive or even better than what Vietnam has done, okay? There's another catch here. Now, a lot of articles, I see a lot of economics journals are saying how Vietnam is going to be the new manufacturing hub, how Vietnam is going to be the next China. Do you know what's the major problem here? Chinese companies have already started moving base from China to Vietnam 3 years ago. So what happens in this case is, if I take out my company from Vietnam, from China, and I say I'm going to manufacture in Vietnam, okay? Happy? Because that's what everyone wants to do. Go out of China and go somewhere else. In Vietnam, the manufacturing units are already owned by China. And that's what the world is failing to see. So on paper, we'll be happy, you know? Companies and industries are coming out of China, they're going to India or going to Vietnam. But in Vietnam, who is the owner of those companies? It's Chinese owners again, because they've already taken a lot of control over the manufacturing in Vietnam. So next time you see a label that says made in Vietnam, it is made in Vietnam, but the owner of that company is going to be Chinese. So that's the catch. And that's why I'm saying interesting. Trade is so interlinked. What we have to do is focus on a home ground, what we do in India right now. That is more important. Again, very easy to say, right? Do trade with US, do trade with Australia. But what is the distance? More the distance, the more it's going to cost for freight. Okay, even if we use ships which are cheaper, India doesn't have a good trade port system that is as developed as a few other countries in Southeast Asia. So we have to boost up our trade ports. We have to make ourselves available and easy to access by ships, and then we can talk about increasing trade with these countries. Otherwise, these countries won't come to India. One is the distance, one is the freight cost, and the other one is not having enough trade ports that are well built at an international level that even small countries like Vietnam have done. So this is not criticism. This is an area where we need to focus as a nation together. Okay. The other part I quickly like to talk about is, you guys must have heard about mutual funds, right? When you invest in companies and you invest in portfolios, what is the common thing we always hear? Diversify your portfolio, isn't it? Don't depend on one area too much. If that collapses, you lose everything. The same has to be done with trade. Now, with these numbers, you will see India's imports, 30% of India's imports, so what we import from around the world, 30% is mineral products. I think that is very high. So that is from all the imports together, 30% is mineral products. So we need to work on that. Okay, we need to make our own, we have to mine for resources. Now, some of you will argue and say, Eshan sir, this is resources. If you have them, you have them. If you don't have them, you don't have them, right? But we can always work towards greener, cleaner resources as well. Wind energy, wind farm, hydroelectricity, electricity through waves. Okay, there are solar panels. I think India is doing great with wind energy. I can see them a lot around India, wind turbines, but hydroelectricity and solar panels not at world class yet. Okay, there is work to be done. Well, let's keep that aside. How about machinery? 20% of our imports are machinery. Why? We should be able to make that machinery. I would say 20% is too high. 5 to 6% of import being machinery is okay. We have to create the rest in our country. So this is a little portfolio, not everything about the trade India is involved in. Now let's look at our exports. 14% of our exports are chemical products. That is the maximum portion of our export, only 14. We have to boost it. We can make chemical products in our country. You know, when we talk about setting up industries, make in India, manufacture, look for chemical products, increase that level, increase that 14% to a higher level. Textiles is only 13% of our exports. We can boost that up as well. We are very good with agriculture, isn't it? Traditionally a very agricultural country. Boost that vegetable products that are only 6% right now. So these are the sort of areas where we can pay attention and get that trade deficit down. You know, increase the exports, decrease the imports. Right now it's the other way around. We are taking more than what we are giving out. And my last point to everyone, I hear this all the time, you know, make in India, make in India. It's good. I'm not arguing against it, but we have to be smarter. Just making in India is not enough. You have to own in India as well. What if a foreign company comes to India and makes in India and then takes the profit out again? What are we getting? Okay, what if they just hire labor class? If we want other foreign companies to invest in India, we want them to hire engineers. We want them to hire people who are getting higher education, not just laborers, okay? Then we are actually giving skills to our people. See, if you are an engineer and you want to work in a foreign company who has come to India, don't you want to learn something from that company as well? Shouldn't you get an insight as to how that company operates in Germany? What if they're not letting you learn that? What if they're keeping you at a lower level? Then you're not learning everything. What's the point of working for a German company? So your focus should be getting skills from those companies as well. So I'm saying make in India is good, but own in India, make in India, assemble in India as well. Packaging should be done in India. Employ Indian people at higher level. Okay, bring technology to India, share the technology with us. Okay, so we can work on it together as well. Patents, okay, the patents should be given in India, not overseas patents. Skills should be given in India and profits should stay here as well. If that's the approach that we have, we won't be happy just by saying, oh, it's made in India, fine. Okay, then we will really be helping our country. Then we'll be really boosting our exports. And that will help us in general. So guys, with that, I'm finishing my class. Thank you very much. Hope you got a few insights that you can think about afterwards. I actually haven't shared my email, but I'm more than happy for your professors to share my email address with all of you. So later on as well, if you want to get in touch with me and you have any questions, I can always get back to you through email. But now my part is done. Thank you. You were a great audience. I'm gonna leave it to your professors now to manage the Q&A session the way they would like.
Yeah, thank you, Eshan. Before we start the question answer session, I just want to give you some information about why the social internship. As we are having the engineering students over here and all are professionals, so always the question is why the social internship for these students? Because many of the students are engaged in the internships which are started by the IT department, mechanical, computer engineering, electronics, and all other departments. But these are the students, some of them have joined voluntarily and some of them have joined because they were not having choice also initially. But now they are very much acquainted with this. So the social internship which we have started in our college is to inculcate some of the qualities in the students about the social awareness, the capability of the student should be increased, their empathy towards the society, the leadership qualities, team building qualities should be developed in the students, as we are also giving some group activities to the students. So For all these purposes, keeping in mind to increase the social awareness in the students, to create it if it is initially not there, we have started these social internship sessions. Now, I will introduce you to our my fellow colleagues over here. We have Dr. Sunita Pachori ma'am over here. She is the Deputy HOD
Hello.
and Deputy HOD of
Eshan,
our
sir.
ES, Engineering and Science Department, and also the Program Officer of NSS, which is one of the social bodies, as you know. So this is Sunita ma'am. Okay, and the next one
Hello,
is
nice to meet you.
Yeah.
the next is Dr. Satish Singh sir. He is the assistant professor in mathematics department, and he is also one of the program officer of the social body NSS. After that, we
Hello,
have
sir.
Everyone, hello.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
hello.
sir.
Yeah. Then we have Ashwin Pathak sir, who is the host of the meeting and
Hello.
who has introduced you. Yeah. He is the assistant professor in mechanical. His subject mechanical engineering. He is teaching the mechanics, engineering, mechanics, and drawing subjects to us. And then myself, Dr. Ila Agar, I am the assistant professor in physics department in this electronic sciences and humanities department. Okay. So these are all the four of us, as we are related to the social bodies. Both Ashwin sir and me, both are handling the EWT, that is Extension Working Program of our college. This is also one of the social body. As four of us involved in this work of social bodies, we have been given the responsibility of attending this social internship program. Okay, so this is all about us. And now I will ask Ashwin sir to start this question answer session.
A very once again a great thanks, sir. Great thanks, and really it was an eye opener. And I got one of the feedback. Student gave the feedback. It was one of the most intellectual session. It actually opened many rare corners of my mind, and very fruitful. It was very fruitful.
Thank you.
Ashwin sir,
Yeah,
just in between. Yeah, Eshan sir, warm welcome to you. It's so sorry
Thank
that we would like to introduce in the starting, but due to some technical glitches, it takes time. And
It's all good.
you will be surprised to know that Siddhi Jagir, madam from California, she has joined the session. I will just introduce her. That she is an
Wonderful.
educator and a professional coach. She has 21 plus years of teaching experience with expertise in chemistry, biology, and mathematics. And she's loved to groom young minds towards the use of technology. So created a non-profit. And she is also being a next speaker, not today, but I've given her time to just take the session on 29th. Yeah, Siddhi.
Yeah, hello
Welcome,
everyone.
Siddhi.
Thank you very much. It was really nice to get connected with so many intellectual people. And I would like to say that the session which was presented is really an eye opener. Thank you very much for giving all the basis.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Eshan sir, we are very thankful. We know that you are having a busy schedule, but despite your busy schedule, you have found time to just grace this social internship program. Yeah, over to Ashwin sir.
Yes, any students wants to ask something, please put it on a chat. We are going over the time, so please do it fast. And it's really an energetic session what has happened today. And please ask the question as more as possible. Till the question comes in a chat, Eshan sir, I want to ask that what are the things to be done? I'm talking about at a personal level. What are the things to be done to overcome the problem of this economy?
At a personal level, I would say everyone needs to have patience for starters. Things are not going to be normal straight away. So just accepting and embracing the situation, I think at a personal level, will help everyone around us. That's for starters. And the second part I would say straight away is use your skills wherever possible. Now it's easy for me to say spend, because spending is one of the best roads to recovery when it comes to a country or any economy being having a recession, for example. It's pretty ironic, isn't it, if people are losing jobs and I say, please spend, where are they going to spend from? So here comes the part where each person can identify what skills they have embedded in themselves and try to use those skills in different industries and not being scared to take the risk. For example, now, a lot of lecturers at our university who are going to lose jobs will be working as accountants. And they have to use the other part of their skill somewhere. They can't just say, I'm a very senior professor, I'm not going to work as an accountant, I'm not going to do that. Until the economy recovers and jobs are created, they will have to use the other skills that they have some way or the other. And I think this is a great opportunity for those who are struggling to actually explore the skills they have and utilize it elsewhere, because everyone's country will need those skills. But the last thing we want is people who are talented sitting at home just waiting for their regular jobs to get back. Don't think of that. It'll come later on. Think of something else where you can work and contribute.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. The question has arrived and the huge list has been came now. The very first question. Sir, in India, most of the people are not coming upfront for COVID-19 checking. So how can we deal that?
I think this is not just the case in India. Australia appears to be it is a developed country, but I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people scared over here as well. We have a lot of people on temporary visas who are paranoid. They feel if they come up front, what if the government sends them home? So in India, of course, based on the population, those numbers will be very higher compared to Australia. But I think we have to deal with this. This is unfortunate, What happens at the end of the day if people do come up front? Let's say one of us, I don't want that to happen, but let's say one of us feel they have COVID-19 and are not coming up. What's the worst that can happen? One, they're harming themselves. Two, if they actually go out in public, they're going to spread it. So I feel, okay, we acknowledge that some people are scared, they are hiding, not coming up for the test. But I feel as far as they stay indoors and they're not spreading it and hopefully their situation doesn't worsen, I think it's okay. We can't do much about it, but it's not the end of the world. I think it's better they stay home.
Okay. There's the next question being came from one of the students. Being an economist, what do you think? That India will beat the economy of China and America? If yes, then in how many years, sir?
I always get asked this question. Actually hear a lot about this as well. And it's always optimistic. I would actually not counter question, but I'll ask whoever thinks, about beating Chinese or US economies, what is our definition of beating someone's economy? Are we just talking about GDP? If it is just GDP that we're talking about, yes, one day we might do it. If we boost our exports and if you look at the solutions that I provided, maybe in the next 50 or 60 years, difficult to happen before that. Maybe when all of you are close to your retirement, you can say we did it. I may be there, I may not be there, I'm not sure. But the question is, do we really want to talk about GDP? Is that what the competition is all about? I feel no. I think HDI, that is the Human Development Index, and there are many other areas that showcase the standard of living in a country are what we should be looking at. Do you guys know which country is the #1 in the world when it comes to standard of living? It is Norway. And if I were to show you with my hand gestures, the economy of Norway and the economy of China, this is the economy of Norway, and that's the economy of China. Can Norway beat Chinese economy? Never. Never happening, okay? Unless we have a magic wand. But what about the quality of living? Way better. So I think our focus should be somewhere else, not competing, saying, are we beating US economy? Are we the world's biggest economy? It's not about biggest. I think it's the quality of the living standards in our country where we should be focusing more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. One more question. Is giving cash directly to the people is a good idea to revive economy?
If you want a blanket answer, yes, it is good as far as people spend the cash. So if with all the stimulus packages, with all government help, whether it's going to your account or if it's coming in cash, the idea is that you spend it. So if you're not going to spend it, it's useless. It's not going to work. So giving cash is good, but encouraging people to spend. See, if I spend, it's your income, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I spend with a shopkeeper, it's that shopkeeper's income. If I get paid and I keep it in, I'll say I'll do it alone. It's not going to help the economy. So in the short run, spending is more important, not just getting the cash.
Okay. There's the next question. As you said, sir, that India should manufacture product instead of importing, but to start a new plant, interest rate in India is too high compared to any other country, like more than 10% and 2 to 3% in America.
That's where the government comes to play. That's where the government subsidies, an increment in special economic zones, that's required. Now, I don't want to comment, make this a political discussion about what our government is doing and not doing. That's for another day, of course. But I would say definitely if you feel and you got the data with you that shows starting a new industry or a company is difficult in India, then I would definitely say it is, all we can hope is our government provides us with subsidies at the beginning, and that's the only way out. I feel we do have special economic zones, but expanding those special economic zones and not only keeping those SEZs for foreign companies, but opening up SEZs for local Indian companies is something we can definitely work on.
There's another question. It's been a tough year for Australia because of the bushfires and the COVID-19 pandemic. So how did the country authorities reacted on so much happening?
I think in general, what really worked in Australia's favor was having surplus. And we really felt it. So when you look at the balance of payments, what any country owes other countries and what other countries owe you. So Australia was doing pretty good in that department with regards to the surplus. I'm pretty sure now the surplus is over because it has been used for recovery and we are having crisis after crisis after crisis. But having that strong economy at the beginning has actually helped to survive right now. Now going ahead, if the remainder of 2020 or 2021 brings in another disaster, I think then we are in trouble. But I think having a strong economy at the beginning was very useful.
The next question is, which sectors will be going to be worse post-corona period, sir? Industrial sectors.
Are going to be worst? I feel anything that is to do with retail. So I would say fast fashion, non-essentials, let's put it that way. Okay, we all know that there are certain areas where we need to spend and there are certain areas where we just are happy to spend. So I think that part that is not so essential, if you're going to buy a pair of shoes that you don't need, if you're going to buy some fashion brand that you don't need, it's those foreign companies, those shoes, retail, clothing industry, I think that's going to take a big hit because people are going to be very careful how they spend going ahead. So the essential parts are going to really go up. The non-essential ones, I think, luckily now the parents don't have to tell the kids don't spend here. It's automatically going to happen and those industries will take a hit. But like I said, it depends country to country, I can't say the same for Australia. In Australia, education industry has a massive hit than any other. Our retail and hospitality has also taken a hit, but yeah, they will bounce back. See, hospitality is always in demand. I think hospitality in India, in Australia have taken a big hit, but they will bounce back eventually. We just have to see how long they take, and hopefully, while bouncing back, they don't exploit the labor. I think that's something we have to look into.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for giving your eye-opener speech, and really the question answers were also being great, actually great. For a small instant, I'm just want to. Okay, I got one more question. Okay, which sector will be? Okay, what are you thinking about network marketing in India and world? What are future scopes? Eshan, sir, over to you.
What marketing?
What are you thinking about network marketing in India and world? What are the future scope? Basically, he's trying to say what is the scope of network, basically 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and so on. What is the status?
Losing, your connection was getting weaker. I think it's going to see, regardless of what conspiracy theories that come up. I think that's the way this is. How sharply it grows is a different story. I think everyone has taken a hit when it comes to the rate. Network, 5G, 4G, or just network industry in general, I think has a big future. If you're planning a career in that, I think it would be a good choice
to
enter in that, and not just in India, in the world as well.
The question being asked from the electronics and telecommunication engineer. So
okay, so you should be happy with what you have chosen.
Okay. There's the next question. What are the ways to improve standard of living in a developing country?
So I would say education is one. The fact you don't have, but education, pollution, situation. Okay, so safety of sanitation, access to toilets, clean drinking water, the difference between different classes in the society, access to amenities. So when I say education, that's one. But how about access to a shopping center? How about access to clean drinking water? How about access to a produce that is better? It has used what would you call that one? Organic produce, for instance. So it is that accessibility and freedom. I feel, I won't comment much, but I feel somewhere the freedom in India is coming under fire to a certain degree. So freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of expression. And when I say expression, it could be everyone, even LGBTIQ community. That freedom has to increase, less bullying, and then we're looking towards a better standard of living. But if you want a textbook answer, I would say education, disease control, and help from the government. Okay, so these are a few things that can boost it up.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving the very straightforward answer. It was really a great session with you. I need a small comment from Siddhi ma'am related to the corona or a COVID-19 and related to the situation of California on this particular topic.
Okay, thank you very much for asking that question. In California, as we have very much scattered around here, so it is not that impacted that much, because when the lockdown started, we all diligently followed the order. The school was shut down on March 6th, so we all were staying indoors. You could see that everyone was following that mandate. We didn't require any of the cops to ask us to follow the orders. We were following the order. And still, California, that's why it didn't spread that much in California rather than New York. In New York, it's very dense, and the old age population is also more in New York in comparison to California. I guess that's why we were not getting impacted that much. Though the place where I live, it was first diagnosed in my county, but it was contained. Basically, you can say that. And still, we are in lockdown. School, we still 2 more weeks of school, but the school will start. The new session will start in August, and this session we will not. The students will not. We will not have in-person classes, but we will have distance learning. So it's getting there. The restrictions are being a little bit released, but you know what? We have to follow the orders through the CDCs and all that. So we are getting there, but not yet there.
Okay,
it will take time.
Okay, thank you so much, Siddhi ma'am, for giving your small comment. And now, vote of thanks, please, Ella ma'am, over to you.
Yeah. I thank Eshan for delivering such an eye-opening session, giving us accurate picture of Australia from the beginning of the lockdown till date. Now, the comparison between the two countries can make us understand, can make our students understand the position where our country is standing right now, at which position we are, and what we can do further, and where we will be going from this point in this pandemic. And also, positive aspects of our country are also you highlighted that is like we are helping the poor people, our country. So that is definitely boost our economical side of the country related to the jobs, make in India, and so many other factors related to the social and financial criteria will help our students to understand our country better and the policies of our government better in the future. So I thank Eshan wholeheartedly for coming over here and giving us such a big good session which our student really enjoyed.
Thank you very
Thanks a
much.
lot.
I thank you for the opportunity and
Yeah,
thank you for,
Ilana.
it
Yeah,
was great
just
to connect
our
with all of you.
Yeah,
audience, my guest audience is
yeah,
also
ma'am.
there. Siddhi ma'am is
Okay.
also there.
Yeah. And I also thank
No
Siddhi ma'am.
worries, no
She is
worries,
from
no
California.
worries.
No, ma'am.
I took it, yeah.
Actually, thanks a lot for attending the session and also giving the picture, which is actually there in California, and you will be there, and we will look forward to your session on 29th.
I would love to
Thank you.
have you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Ishan
you.
sir. Thank you,
Thank
Siddhi.
you.
Thanks
I'll
all
just
the
say
students. Yes.
I'll just say
Thank you
something
very
funny
much.
at the end. My last visit to India was December 2018. And if someone asked me when was your latest visit, I would say it was today, 25th, because I actually felt I'm in India right now. I think so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Siddhi. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
Thanks
everyone.
all the
Thank
students.
you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Now, all students, you have to leave the meeting.
You can leave now.
Wait.
Yeah.
Students, for
Ma'am,
today's,
activity.
today's
Ah.
evening activity, they are supposed.
Yeah.
Please go for it.
Yeah, I will upload the assignment on GC immediately. Okay. In Google Classroom, I will upload the assignment immediately. Okay, after this session is over.
Okay, so once the uploading is done,
Yeah.
you are supposed to go with that and then complete the work, and we'll once again meet in the evening, 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining. You can leave. Thank you.
Yeah, you can leave.